Let's bring in my panel now. Emma, you understand business. These trips, which they took many times, sometimes annually, would have cost $500,000. That's a vacation worth $500,000. And Justice Thomas didn't disclose these trips.
I do wonder if he wanted to vacation on a 162-foot yacht if he went into the wrong line of work. I mean, he's a public servant who's paid $285,000. I think that this demands a lot of investigation and scrutiny, and I think it's worth stating up front there is no historical precedent for the amount and the frequency of the kind of flouting of legal ethics here. And I mean, the Supreme Court is a body of 9 people who are tasked with being our kind of ethical police, our arbiters of legal standards in this country. And so I think that the fact that one of the members of that body considered himself above his own legal standards, and that is also someone who has a track record of, refusing to recuse himself from potential conflicts of interest. I think all of that is something that raises a lot of questions and just alarm bells.
Nicholas.
It's super gross. That's a lot of money to be just kind of vacuuming up as a justice. But the funny thing I think about what you just mentioned, he's paid $285,000. And I think this is not an apology for him, but I think we pay our public servants way too little. I mean, $285,000 is a lot of money. A lot of people in this country would love to make $285,000. But, CEOs, media executives, people on television make a lot more than that. And we want our best and brightest to be in these jobs. Why not pay them millions of dollars to do that?
I do have to say, I think there often is an issue where the more you make, the more you want to make. I think that's
maybe.
That
Shouldn't we start with public school teachers who are risking their lives every day now?
Maybe, but if you look at it this way, right now you're taking talented, ambitious people and you're saying, here, make $175,000. And now I'm talking about people who work in the White House, people who work in the Supreme Court, people who work in Congress. And what you're doing basically is you're saying oh, you see all these wealthy, connected people that could give you money? Why don't you sell access to them so you can have a nice retirement vacation home?
Well, people do not become Supreme Court justices for the money. And I think there's still a lot of people who want to be Supreme Court justices. I don't think you need to worry about it.
I'm not trying to apologize for anything you did. It's gross. But I just think it's $300,000 for someone we want.
Even if you made $1 million, you still can't go on a super yacht in Indonesia.
But I also think that ultimately the issue here is, even if there is an impropriety, which I actually think there is, but in my opinion, but the Supreme Court is as unpopular as it has ever been since they have been polling the Supreme Court. This isn't, people think of it as a lot of people in this country think of it as a kangaroo court. Here we are, and we have, it looks like impropriety, even if it isn't to the people outside of it. It looks like impropriety.
How could it not be impropriety?
Well, look, I think he should have disclosed clearly these gifts, but Harlan Crow's hospitality towards Clarence Thomas had no effect on his legal decision.
How do you know
so
that?
It didn't matter. Well, here's why. It didn't matter if he had cocktails on a yacht or if he had a shake at McDonald's. His legal reasoning was going to be his reasoning regardless.
How do you know that? How do you know that on this yacht?
Because there's a history of consistency of thought.
Well, he's always been a conservative. I take your point. He's always been a conservative. How do you know they're not talking about issues
because
that are
here's the
important
question.
to Republicans?
What is the quid pro quo? What did Harlan Crow have to offer Clarence Thomas? Because what's different with legislators is you have donors that could influence their next election. Harlan Crow can't give Clarence Thomas something he already has. He has a lifetime appointment on the Supreme Court. So I just, again, it's improper. I think to Molly's point, I agree that it doesn't help the institution, but it's a little bit like speeding 67 into 55. Yeah, kind of dangerous, but the big ethical issue that we ought to focus on is the stewardship of taxpayer funds. And I care a lot about transparency. Mm-hmm. My former boss, Coburn, wrote a landmark transparency bill with Barack Obama. In 2006,
so
the GUI or government.
Because these are no taxpayer funds,
it's a different. Well, I would say overlook. I would say it's a different level of scrutiny. We should be outraged by the trillions of dollars.
Okay, we're outraged by that too.
Yeah.
Emma, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is a group of people who is supposed to be avoiding even the appearance of a conflict of interest. And, I don't think it's so much to ask that we should hold this group of 9 people just to the highest possible ethical and legal.
Also, I'd just like to say that we can hear from Justice Thomas himself about the kinds of vacations that he really prefers because he has spoken publicly. So privately, he's going on the super yacht, but publicly, here's what he says about his dream vacation.
You know, I don't have any problem with going to Europe, but I prefer the United States, and I prefer seeing the regular parts of the United States. I prefer going across the rural areas. I prefer the RV parks. I prefer the Walmart parking lots to the beaches and things like that. There's something normal to me about it. I come from regular stock, and I prefer that. I prefer being around that.
He prefers the Walmart parking lot to the super yacht that he's going on in private in Indonesia.
And yet,
He doesn't have to win elections. Why is he spouting phony baloney? Like, just be real, man. It's a lifetime appointment.
But he has a rich friend. I mean, that's really the story. Why is that scandalous? That Clarence
Because
Thomas
he's claiming to
Thomas is a
like
rich analyst. Get out of here.
RV parks and Walmart parking lots for his vacation. Do you not see any hypocrisy there?
No, again, like Clarence Thomas, it was going to be Clarence Thomas regardless of what Harlan Crow.
Okay, but
what bedroom he stayed in or
why is
Harlan
he
Crow.
telling
Because
the
he
public
owes
he
it
likes
to the
be
court.
in the Walmart
but
parking
also he didn't declare.
He likes
and
both.
and I think what's important here is that after 2004, when there was a big story about all his gifts that he got in the LA Times, he stopped declaring his gifts, and he did not declare larger gifts for 17 years. And I think that certainly looks like impropriety to me.
Yeah, and that's the I agree with you because I think he's brought undue reputational harm on the Supreme Court. He didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm not defending him not disclosing, but I think we have to put it in perspective that the bigger ethical problem are the trillions of dollars that politicians waste because they don't want to do their job.
We'll do that
Totally
story
different.
in a different day. I agree. But this one is about super yachts. And I know that you also know this Republican donor, mega donor.
Not as well as I'd like to.
Not that.
You got to buddy up.
I can see that. All right. Yes. Stay with me, everyone. Next, we're learning.